Hello, this is the rotation analysis video. If you're more interested in how the overall planning for the speed kill happened, please check out the Google Doc in the description of either this video or the original 605 kill video. But this is specifically about my ninja rotation and why I made the choices that I made. So, first of all, before I talk about any specific GCDs, we wanted to kill at 604, and what that means, well, that means a few things for ninja. First of all, ninja needs you to be in combat to press buffs, so you can't pre-pull any of the buffs or any of the raid buffs or personal buffs. And then you have to, if you want to get those buttons at the end, you basically have to keep them on cooldown. And from what I found, you are not able to get both the Tenchi Jin and the Hyosho in the last burst window, so you have to choose one. And the Hyosho ended up being better from what I checked from the rotations I made. So that is one of the main goals of this rotation, is to make sure that Hyosho will hit the boss before it dies. And overall, it's pretty hard on ninja to make sure that you keep as much of your stuff on cooldown as possible so that you can press it at the end without losing a usage. But it's doable. So yeah. The other things I want to focus on are, so it doesn't really apply in this fight, but Bunshin. In speeds in general, it is always better to have a Bunshin in every burst window, even though the cooldown is 90 seconds, losing a usage is worth it, especially if you're the card target, which you should be. And in this fight, because of how the kill time works, you are kind of forced to do it this way, because you can't get the extra usage. And then the card, so the Astro card, the balance, ninja is really, really strong in the balance, and it's something that you want to be maximizing on ninja. And it's the main reason why you even play ninja in the first place, is because it's just so strong with all the buffs, and especially during the card window. So, for the opener, first of all, I mentioned this in the doc as well, but I am using a pre-pull macro, which means at -12 on the timer, I press my macro, and it does everything before the pull for me. So I press the button manually, and then it does the mudras, it does everything, and it presses it. And this is just to make sure that I can pull on time. Very often when you look at logs, you kind of notice that everyone hits the boss at very different times, but we need to hit the boss at the same time here, because just for consistency, and that's how we plan the rotation, right? If you're half a second late to the pull, you're just adding half a second onto your kill time for no reason, basically. It's a bit different with the downtime, but that's the general idea. And this is completely allowed by FF logs, and it's recommended in speeds, and I think it's really good just to do in general, because it allows you to be way more consistent with your pull time, and it's especially relevant in speeds. So the opener itself, you can see here I've pulled up the rotations, the two rotations I had for this fight, and this is on xivandtheshell.com, which is the site that we used for our rotation spreadsheets, mainly because it's compatible with the sim that we used. Again, more information on this in the document that I linked in the description. But okay, so the first decision you have to make on ninja in this opener, you can see that almost every off GCD slot is taken. Where do you put the potion? The two approaches you can basically take are either clip here on purpose, so either double weave after the Suiton or triple weave after the spinning edge, or what I elected to do was have the potion pre-pull. And this, from my testing, this is the better play. And you lose, I think it's 3 GCDs, I think, in the pot. You lose these 3 GCDs in the pot. However, you gain the Suiton, and you gain the spinning edge, because I think people were doing the pot after this GCD. So, and these are in buffs. Well, this one is for sure, and this one is in a few buffs, in our case. And that's one thing. Then second, not clipping is pretty nice for this rotation because of how it works with the cooldowns. I don't want to clip, I don't want to drift anything. I want to choose where to put everything, so not having to clip is very nice. And then lastly, because of how I'm doing my raid buff, my Dokomori instantly, because of how this works, putting it here, so not having to weave something, allows me to catch both of the edge of shadows that the Dark Knights do with the raid buff. So if I go over to the log, you can see here that these edge of shadows, which are in a lot of buffs and in pot, which is not reflected in this damage number, are they are in Dokomori, and even though they're cast at 0.3. And if you were to double weave this Dokomori, it would only hit the boss at 0.4. And you may be wondering, well, can't you just early weave it? Isn't that better? You just press it as early as possible. Unfortunately, you cannot. And this is a really weird thing that I found, and I'll demonstrate it in game for you. The way Dokomori works is it puts a debuff on the boss. And it does this instantly. And then a second later, the damage goes out. So 1.07 seconds later, the damage hits. And typically the way it works is, if you're out of combat and you press Reprisal or Addle or Feint, the boss or whatever enemy you're hitting will enter combat with you. But Dokomori is really weird in that it doesn't actually do that. So if I press this, you'll see I'm going to press this. The debuff is going to happen. And when it turns red, you enter combat. But I'm out of melee range, so I won't auto. So, because it starts your auto attack. So I'm going to press this, and I'm not going to be in combat until the damage goes off, which is really weird. However, on FF logs, despite this not actually starting combat, it still counts the pull. It still counts as if the pull had started, which means that if I were to early weave this Dokomori, and it hits at half a second before the pull is meant to start, that means I'm making everyone else late pull by half a second, even though combat hasn't even started yet. And so to avoid this, you cannot early weave the Dokomori, which means you would not ever be able to catch those two edges. And that is why the pre-pull pot is actually worth it in this case. So now I can move on to the second part, or the second thing I wanted to talk about in the opener, which is a bit more straightforward. So basically, with Bunshin only works on GCDs, on melee GCDs, which are these, really just these 3 fleeting Raijus are important, and then these 2. So 5 GCDs. I'm doing the Tenchi Jin this early because I don't have enough Ninki to press Bunshin. Because you need 50, you get 40 from the Dokomori, you get 5 from this, and you would do 1, 2 Dokomori Bunshin. But you can't do that because you're not pressing 2, because you're bursting so early. And so you have to do this to press Meisui, which gives you 50. Then you can Bunshin. Then you can press your 3 fleeting Raijus all in Bunshin. Because if you had done this earlier, you would not have been able to do it this way. So that's the reasoning there. And then this pot is not just pre-pull, because typically you do -6. So 6 seconds before the pull starts, you start pressing your mudras. I overcap on purpose later anyways, so I can do it a second later. And doing it a second later means I can pot right before and just barely catch these 2 GCDs. If you do this the way you normally would pull, you don't catch these 2. But being able to catch these 2, that's what pushes that pot over the edge. So yeah, that is the opener. After the opener, the next interesting thing is I have a clip on purpose here to keep this Kasatsu on CD, and it also aligns the 2-minute better. And because there's a downtime at 3 minutes, I don't lose a usage. Or not usage, I'm sorry. I don't lose a GCD, and I don't lose any time on my GCD, really. Because after the downtime, it pretty much just resets anyway. So it's all good. And I will show the... Here, you're about to see. If you look, I'm going to spin my camera. But I'm going to clip this Kasatsu here. GCD just doesn't go off for a tiny bit there. Yeah, I spun my camera because it felt like it helped. It didn't actually help, but And then we come to this is quite interesting. I think what a lot of people did here on this mechanic, this double tank buster plus spread, is that you would always have the non-tank group move to the melee spot, and the tank's always in the downtime spot, because they can roll their GCDs with the 2.5 GCD. But in our case, we decided not to do that as a group. Whether that's the correct decision, I am not sure. I don't really think so, looking back. But at the time, we said, if it loses even a single cast from our casters, we We thought it would be quite difficult to make it over in time, so we decided to just stay on the same side, and if it's the downtime pattern, we would just play it. We are LBing here anyway, so our monk wasn't really a factor. He would be, he doesn't really care, so we're just rescuing him. But you can see here in the rotation, there is a throwing dagger, and because this is the downtime pattern, I am pressing throwing dagger in this rotation, which you typically don't really want to do. But in this case, it's completely fine. Well, it is still a very slight loss, but it's actually fine. So, the first thing you want to consider is, if I have to press throwing dagger, why don't I just move this right on out of the trick? Unfortunately, I couldn't do that because if I press it too late, I overcap too much, and it won't be up for the 2-minute window, and I'm going to lose a mudra in buffs, which is very bad, and it's just very annoying for the rest of the fight. So that's worse. We can't do that. And then I did it as late as I could, and then I pressed forked Raiju. I tried this. I pressed forked Raiju to gap close in, but I would just dash out of the stack. It was completely fine for a while, but then I noticed that I was losing some time compared to the sheet. So this says you want to hit at 129 or 119.906, and I was consistently 0.3, 0.4 seconds behind, which is quite bad. Because this rotation ends at 6:04.5, and we wanted to kill at 6:04. So losing half a second there means your GCD is not hitting at the right time. And so I used, well, this is not, not sponsored. I'm not cool enough for that. I turned on exit lag, and that fixed everything. I don't know, the routing is very bad. So even though I have very low ping, I think right now I have 20 something ping. Even though the ping is very good, the connection should be quite good. The network routing is just not good. And so exit lag fixed that, and therefore I just gained 0.3, 0.4 out of nowhere, which also meant that the forked Raiju gap close, which had worked previously, no longer worked. And so I had to think of something else, and this is what I came up with. So it's just the throwing dagger. If you're doing this fight normally on Ninja, you would have a Bunshin here, and you can just use Phantom Kamaitachi. But because I'm putting the Bunshin into every burst window, because I'm not losing, or I'm not losing a usage by doing so, and it's better regardless. I was not able to do that, so I had to press the throwing dagger here, or I felt I had to, with how we did this. And so from now on, these rotations are going to be 1 GCD apart. You can see here that it's like this, and actually in this burst window, it's quite good, because you can see here that I have a Phantom here, so I can have this alien edge in the burst. But in this rotation, because I'm a GCD behind, I can do this and then have the Phantom at the end of the burst where I would have a spinning edge. And you can see it's approximately 200 potency more to do it this way. And I'll just let this burst play. The main thing I want to prioritize in these burst windows, because the Ninja burst is pretty standard, you kind of know what buttons you want to press. What I wanted to do was have as many Baba Chakras in here as possible. So in every single burst window, I'm going to have 3 Baba Chakras. So the Zesho Meppo, the empowered one, and then 2 others. This is the most normal of the burst windows. The others are going to be a little weird, but yeah, so that is what the 2-minute looks like. And again, I'm trying to maximize card value. So the card in this case covers, I'll show the card windows on at the end, but I try to make them again as good as possible here. And again, we're still a GCD apart. And then we get to the 3-minute, and the 3-minute, I actually delay both the Kasatsu and the trick by a GCD. And you may be wondering, why did we do that clip earlier on purpose if we're going to delay it anyway? And the answer is, again, it was for the 2-minute alignment. It just made it work really nicely, and I didn't lose anything, so I didn't really care. And the reason I'm delaying these is because I have this spinning edge here. I could do it earlier, but I get a gust slash instead of the spinning edge here by doing it a GCD later, and same thing here, I get an alien edge instead of a gust slash in this rotation because I'm a GCD ahead on this one. Yeah, and then during the downtime, or right before the downtime, this GCD hits. It's quite lenient. looks like it's like right after, but it is on time. So it does always hit the boss. It's very consistent. Now during the downtime, there is a mudra here. So I did skip a right-on in this trick window, which loses you approximately 70 potency, on purpose to have it during the downtime here. And this is for two reasons. The smaller of the two reasons is that if I'm at the back here, or in the lower corner, and I think I won't be able to make it to the boss on time, I have a ranged GCD, I will always be able to hit the boss at the same time every time. That's a nice added benefit. The main reason is because this GCD recast is faster, I can end the fight earlier. You get the same amount of GCDs before, but because there's such a short delay between the right-on and the fleeting Raiju, it basically pushes this entire rotation, or it pulls it forward by the half second or so that I need for this rotation to hit, or the last GCD to hit when I wanted to hit. So that was the main reason that I did this. And now we have the 4-minute burst window. The 4-minute burst window is also quite interesting because this is the so-called JP rotation. It's called that because Japanese players did it first. It kind of fell out of favor in Dawn Trail, especially for parsing, because you could get, it was one of the main benefits is that it allows you to get 9 GCDs in the trick window, but you can just do that manually now very easily by just late weaving it because they extended the duration slightly in Dawn Trail. But it still has benefits, the main one being if you swap out the right-on for an Aeolian Edge, in Bunshin it is actually stronger. So in theory, you would want to do this if you can in more burst windows. However, again, with how the fight is structured, I was not able to find a way to do it properly to gain damage in the other burst windows. So this is the only one, and the reason is because if I have a GCD here, this Kasatsu would clip really hard and delay this entire rotation. So because it takes longer to do this mudra, it perfectly slots in the Kasatsu between this and the Phantom Kamaitachi. And yeah, that is why I do the JP rotation here. And the other thing is I wish I would have been able to delay this Alien Edge into the burst instead of having this really weak spinning edge here and the stronger Gust Slash on the other side. Although again, this is made up for by the reverse situation happening earlier, the opposite situation, where I had the strong Phantom here and the weak spinning edge here. But I unfortunately did not find a way to delay this Alien Edge into the burst, because if I Phantom here instead, swapping these two would cancel the Raiju here, and then pressing the Raiju here is just worse, because you want it to be in the trick and in the card. So I was not able to find a way. I also overcap here on purpose because I know exactly how much Ninki I'm going to end the fight with. So I know I'm not losing usage, so instead of burning one outside of buffs, I will just overcap on purpose and then have an extra one inside of the buff window. And that's what the burst looks like. I also want to note that this mudra in the downtime is quite precise in that if I press it too early, the buff is going to expire. And if I press it too late, I would not have it up in time during this burst window. So you'll see here during this burst, right when I want to press it, it'll come up. So watch the mudra spinning in the middle of the bars. If it were any later, it would have, I think it even clipped very slightly there. So if I'm off on the timing in the downtime, then it doesn't work. And the timing is pretty simple. It's just whenever the AoEs appear is when I start pressing it. So you'll see here and now. Yep. So that's the 4-minute window. Now I would show you the 5-minute window, but there is no 5-minute window actually. It's just not there. I dropped the 5-minute trick entirely. And this sounds really bad, but it actually isn't. So it's quite interesting because it's a 604, which means that if you press it on cooldown, first of all, these delays would not have been possible. These delays that gained me damage would not have been possible. I would have had to probably double weave it here or do something else differently, which would have made this really, really awkward. And then you would have it at 604. You basically have one GCD in the trick at the end. And so you're doing a full 1 minute trick and 1 GCD in buffs versus a full no trick in the 5 minute, but you get a full one at the end. And it's not in all buffs, but you'll see there are a few. So that is why I dropped the 5 minute trick. Trick itself does have, or Kunai's Bane does have 700 potency, which is quite a lot. However, you have to keep in mind that not having to press the Suiton means I get an extra Raiton and Raiju, which will also change the GCD alignment for the fight. So you have basically 1 more GCD than you should, which is also quite nice in this case. It means you end on a better GCD. And so it does end up being very worth it actually to just not press this 5 minute trick. And I think that's probably the most interesting thing in this entire rotation is just dropping that 5 minute trick. And then from this point on, I need to press this Kasatsu on cooldown to have it on time. And the other interesting thing that I do, or would do rather, is what I want to say, happens right over here. So it's right over here. And you can see before this, we're still 1 GCD behind on this rotation. But afterwards, we're synced up again. And the reason is because I was going to do an uncomboed Alien Edge. This is only in the rotation where you don't have to press a throwing dagger, because otherwise you end the fight on a spinning edge, which has 300 potency. And uncomboed Alien Edge has 280 potency. However, it still eats the Kazamatoi dagger, the one that gives it plus 100 potency when you hit an enemy from the rear, which means that an uncomboed Alien Edge actually has 380 potency as long as you have a dagger, which makes it stronger than a spinning edge. And even if you end the fight on spinning edge Gust Slash, doing 2 uncomboed aliens is typically stronger than just pressing 1-2. But we would end on a spinning edge. So this is stronger. And that's also the reason this throwing dagger doesn't actually lose that much, because we're just replacing the uncomboed alien with a throwing dagger here, which is 180 potency less. But you have this stronger burst window here. And then you have this one, which is a tiny bit weaker. So overall, I believe it loses 70 potency compared to this rotation. But on average, compared to the Raiton out of trick rotation I was doing previously, it loses 13 potency. 70 potency loss also means that if it's a single Ruin 2 if it saves a single Ruin 2 from my Scholar, for example, to not have to move, then it is better for me to do it this way. Of course, I'm pretty sure you can get it lossless, so I still think it would have been maybe better to be in melee range there, but maybe that I'm just a bit biased as a melee player. And then the last thing is the 5 minute burst, and this was very difficult for me to play. It took quite a while to get used to, but I got it down in the end. So the pot window, it's better to do this afterwards. You get the same GCD or amount of GCDs, but this one it's more potency. And then I do the trick here. So I still get all the GCDs I want to get into the trick. We have Radiant Finale active as of 550. So we pressed it earlier at the 4% buff instead of the 6%, but in exchange we get a lot more time on it. It's under pot, it's under Radiant Finale, it's its own buff, of course, and then I also, of course, get the balance right here, which means that this whole segment is very strong. It's a lot of strong GCDs, and it has quite a few raid buffs, and that's also why this delaying or dropping the 5 minute trick entirely ends up being worth it, because there's quite a bit of buff stacking going on here, even before the very short real buff window at the end. And again, I overcap more on purpose because I know I wouldn't get another Bava Chakra out of my Ninki, so that I can have another triple Bava window here in this last trick. As for the very end of the fight, this is the Kasatsu here that I've been keeping on or off cooldown for the entire fight as much as I can, is the last off GCD here, and then at the end I have the Hyosho hitting the boss. This is swapped. I also didn't press the Dream Within a Dream at the 5 minute, but that's just because it was already delayed. There's no way to keep it there, so you'd rather have it in the buffs than not in the buffs. I have to do it before the Dokumori because I'm pressing this on cooldown, so it's kind of like a middle weave, late weave, and so I had to do it. I felt the need to do it this way. And yeah. Then I have this Sesho Meppo from the buff here, so I have to spend the Baba Chakras earlier. That's all the off GCs I have time for. And there's no Tenchi Jin because, again, the Hyosho ended up being better in here. So if you want to see how that last burst window looks when I play it, it's going to be just like this. And I'm going to move the rotation out of the way so you can see the boss HP bar. I was also, my spread spot here was in the corner because we wanted our Bard's Radiant Finale to hit everyone, as well, the one person on the other side. So he was standing over here and I was standing over here, but it lines up so that I can just run out on this GCD and it's completely fine, so whatever. And then this is the burst. And then the boss dies, which is great. So I said I'd show the card windows. Here they are. Unfortunately, this is very funny. The Hyosho is missing. The Hyosho at the end here did not catch the card, and it didn't catch it by 3,000ths of a second, which is very, very unfortunate. And it was meant to be in here, obviously, and it would have been a banger card window, but it wasn't. So yeah, this barely. It's very sad. It barely misses the previous GCD, and it barely doesn't catch the next one. So it's just the most unfortunate card of all time. Very sad. But overall, I'm very happy. Yeah, again, these are card windows, very strong, and I'm very happy with this rotation. I put a lot of time and effort in to make it as good as possible, and I think I did a pretty good job. I'm sure there are some improvements. I'm sure I missed something, but I think for me, that's about as good as I could get it.